I'm recording.
Can you hear me now? Yes, it does.
Excuse me, my crayon is a monkey, which I find this conversation
taking some interest in learning a bit more about technology, philosophy, and I like to...
I'm an educator.
Absolutely.
We're going to stay anonymous.
That's a cop out.
The binary's gone. I thought jingle was plus Dutch for cheers.
Hi guys, welcome to episode 11 of Beyond Binary Thinking.
The purpose of this podcast is to save the fucking planet from environmental apocalypse. Because what the fuck else matters? Join us and replace the fossil fuels and fake news with renewable media sources.
Thanks, Kit, for your feedback on our last episode on happiness. We've been working hard to get the edit and sound quality tighter. Glad it's been noticed. We appreciated your feedback so much. We're bringing you on a future episode on toxic masculinity.
Fun stuff.
From Amsterdam, I'm Marijn.
From Spain, I'm Finn.
And from Warsaw, I'm Chris.
So today we're tackling the climate crisis, the EnviroApocalypse, if you will.
Dun, dun.
We've all seen the Amazon is burning, but also other important forests like in Angola and Democratic Republic of Congo are burning, even in places we wouldn't expect, like Siberia. So what are the facts on the Amazon fires?
Yeah, it's a bit confusing, isn't it? Because there's been a whole big social media newspaper outrage about the Amazon being on fire. Lots of pictures being shared, and then shortly after being discovered that many of the pictures being shared are actually not really from the Amazon right now. But the Amazon is on fire. Satellite footage has shown that. NASA, I think I saw a post from 24th of August, 1 a.m., where they said it is above last year. But I've also seen researchers saying that there were previous years in which there were more forest fires. And I really think that it is probably not even that much of a unique situation. Amazon has been deforesting and on fire for many years now. But there's a reason why right now there is worldwide outrage about that, right? And I think that it points to a lot of anxiety about climate change, the feeling that the world is being more threatened by this than previously. And also the fact that the person in power there, Bolsonaro, has legitimized this thing happening, has sanctioned this to happen because he's pro-agriculture.
That was something I was curious about because often, as you say, the Amazon's been burnt for years. Like a lot of places, agriculturally, there's a certain time of year when it's time to burn crops and start again, right? Is it just a case that there's a right-winger in power now so that the left-wing press are having a field day with this?
Well, no, there's been research already stating, even in May, that there were signs already of the Bolsonaro government having an impact on the Amazon with deforestation rising. And this was way before this message about forest fires. It's dry season there, but Bolsonaro has many times said that he doesn't believe in any native tribal society right in the Amazon. He's pro-agriculture. He wants to boost the economy of Brazil with agriculture. He has many times shown that he doesn't really have he doesn't think that this contributes to climate change that much. And even then, it's Brazil's right to use this space, this ground, for economical gain. So we have someone who's legitimizing at a time where we need to have action in the opposite direction, right?
Yeah, and like you said, man, there's a swelling of huge support for environmental issues now. With the little Greta sailing across the Atlantic and people just going furious about this on social media and good because it's time for a change, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the picture that Macron posted on Twitter, where he blamed Bolsonaro and said Bolsonaro needed to fix it and this is unbelievable. our lungs of the earth are on fire. And he used a picture which I've seen on most of the articles, and this is a picture from 2018, from last year. And there's a reason why last year this specific picture that was already posted in the news did not go viral. And I think it is because the anxiety at the moment, a year later, has increased so much tenfold that people see a picture and they panic because they realize from other messages that we've seen, we have 10 years to move into a different direction.
Also, the language is changing.
Clearly, we're not.
Right? The language is changing. You mentioned climate change, whereas in my introduction bit, I said climate crisis. And I think people are starting to begin to realize that this is not just changing. It's not just some change. Like, oh, okay, it's a change. Could be better, could be worse. It's like, this is a crisis, you know. And the title of the episode, EnviroApocalypse, because of the dynamics of the system, we can't accurately predict what's going to happen, but we know that it's going to be really bad if we don't stop key forests from burning, like the Amazon. If we continue the way we're going, things are going to get out of hand, and there could be a spiral effect, like a vicious circle of destruction.
So you're saying there could be, but is there not already?
There will be. I mean, the science is
You
quite
don't
clear
think
that
there's
there will
already-
be at some point.
I think the science already clear. It's already happening.
So there's a few
There's
things that
already-
can happen, right? The Amazon rainforest could reach a point where there's a nasty feedback effect. Likewise in Siberia, where you've got the permafrost melting
Well,
and
that's already
methane
happening.
coming up, right?
The
Like-
permafrost is already happening.
yeah, but the
Did you
point
guys
is
not-
you get then enough methane and then it becomes a cycle with a feedback loop and it just becomes runaway. So there's nothing we can
Yeah.
do and it's completely fucked. And the funny thing is the Republicans sponsored by all barons that used to say climate change, the data wasn't certain, are now saying it's definitely certain and it's so certain there's no point in trying to do anything. It's too late. We're fucked.
Well, that is kind of actually my stance on it, because you're saying it will happen. I'm saying it's already happening. I'm saying the permafrost is already melting. I'm saying the methane is already causing a runaway effect. I'm saying the oceans are already causing a runaway effect. Ice in Greenland is already melting. The Arctic underneath the water is already melting. We've got huge glaciers that are breaking. We've got glaciers disappearing in Iceland. It is already, the runaway effect might already be there. I've read articles that scientists said, I think it was 3 years ago, we need to clean out 12 billion tons of CO2 from the air every year next to becoming carbon neutral.
Yeah, at the same time. But this is
we're
the
not
point.
we're not even becoming carbon neutral, are we? We're polluting more with carbon than any previous year.
No, and even like in the last couple of years, we've gone from, we need to avoid a 2% increase to, okay, a 2% increase in temperatures is going to happen. So what's next?
Yeah.
Well, if a 2% of increase is going to happen, it might be not as apocalyptic on the land, but it'll be apocalyptic in the oceans.
Yeah. And that's
Like
it's
a
all
2
linked,
degree
isn't it? So-
rise.
I mean, which I've already seen. Like, I was running an environmental tour company and a scuba diving instructor, and I've just seen unfathomed levels of coral bleaching everywhere I went. Like
That's
Caribbean,
scared me.
Asia, Australia, Great Barrier Reef. Everyone I
Great
spoke to
Barrier,
was
yeah.
the same, just white. And, it comes and it goes, and it's worse than El Nino seasons and all that. But yeah, it's pretty depressing, guys. And that's the thing that we need to stop is how do we stop this from going from climate crisis to climate despair? Because it's really depressing. And I think we need this is a crisis. The building's on fire, not like, oh, fuck it. Like, what's the point? We're already fucked.
The difference would be if you use that building on fire analogy, it's like if you're stuck in the building and the doors are locked, well, you do what you can to get out. You look for an axe, a fire extinguisher to smash open the doors. That's what we have to do now. I think it's too late to say, thoughts and prayers, let's pray for Amazon. It's like, that. What are you talking about? Pray for Amazon. We need to do something about it. And this is an interesting difference between traditional climate movements like Greenpeace, Fridays for Future, maybe in the middle, but Extinction Rebellion say it's the time for courage, not hope. We have to act now, and it's the old ways haven't done enough, and we really need to fix it. We need to just do now. And the reason why despair is perhaps an anger is the dominant emotion is because it then enforces, then it encourages people to act. If you just think about stuff and pray, well, then that's a substitute for doing something. It's like if you share a picture on Facebook, it's like, yeah, good, you're raising awareness, but you're actually going to do something as well. It's like, we need to do more. That would be my.
I hope so, and I hope the urge to hit smash like on Facebook doesn't replace people's need to get out there and do something. So exactly. I was saying, Finn, I'll see you at Extinction Rebellion, right? You're coming to London.
Yeah, I'll be swimming over.
Let's do it. So before we get into, whether the world's going to end and whether there's any point in caring, we hit on the social media's response to it. And I think that's an interesting one because it is the lens through which we'll see it. I don't know how often you guys watch traditional news on TV these days. So most of us probably see it through the lens of Facebook, right? And I think it's interesting, like the social media response has been kind of typical. I've seen a lot of posts about how, last year everyone cared about Notre Dame, but why does no one care about the Amazon and bloody religions? And I'm like, well, it's a bit of a false dichotomy. I think that the lesson I took from Notre Dame is that everyone can mobilize and give a fuck and fix something. Like that's the lesson we take home. And like Mareng said at the opening, people are caring about this more and more and more. Like, so it's entirely possible that, like enough of a critical mass is building that it's time to fucking change things.
Sure, I would agree with that. But let me be maybe the skeptic. And if you continue on to the Notre Dame thing, right? This was a historical thing that burned down. The president of the country himself said, we need to rebuild this and we can use support. Now look at Brazil, where the president, he just mobilized a little bit of the army to go and take out some of the forest fire because, he's pressured internationally. But really, Bolsonaro does not want to fix this. And what kind of authorization does any other country have to do anything there?
Yeah, and there's the problem as well. It's very easy for the entire world, polluting as much as they do, to turn around to Brazil and say, hey, could you slow down your industrial revolution now, please? Because we cut down all our forests. We'd rather you not cut down
200 million
yours.
people living there. 200 million people wanting to earn money for their food, their promise in better life.
And let's be clear as well, like most of, the rainforest getting cut down is for coffee and beef for export reasons, right? Like it's soy. Not Brazil just destroying the world for its own sake. Like,
that's right.
We're the ones ordering the beef. We're the ones ordering the coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. I think if you're a meat eater, beef eater specifically, then you can't really say X for Amazonia or pray for Amazonia.
You can. Come on.
To quote Grey Fallacy, yes, you can. It makes you a hypocrite, but you can say it.
So this is a problem I've had. Like our very own Matt was getting angry with Extinction Rebellion because he found out that some of the leadership there weren't vegans and calling them out in public about what hypocrites they were. And my take on this was it was exactly against the advice we gave him on the episode, right? Like, don't do this infighting. Don't call everyone a hypocrite. Like, what's the bigger picture here? What's important?
But no.
Well, I'd
but
like
what's
to hear
the
your
bigger
thoughts on that, guys.
What's the bigger picture? I'm not asking you to be a vegan. If you don't want to be a vegan, fine. Buy your beef locally, and buy, from a nearby farmer who is not feeding with soy coming from Brazil. But here's the thing: this is an economy thing. And until we have enough,
just want beef, they want cheap beef, right?
we don't have the international law enforcement that we can really do much about this. Not enough, Sure, we could start imposing sanctions and reevaluating the Mercosur agreement, and then maybe China says, "Okay, we'll buy all your beef," and then.
Well, no, and this is the problem that happens again and again. Like the EU banned all these practices and tried to be carbon neutral, and then everyone just bought it from Amazon from China. And then people are pointing fingers at China for producing stuff. Well, they're the manufacturing plant of the world, and they're producing stuff that we order. So
stop consuming.
That's the thing, right?
You're voting with your
this
wallet.
Myth of green consumerism And it's an oxymoron because every act of consuming, right? You can be driving in your Land Rover down to the local Waitrose to buy your avocados imported from Chile, but you don't use a bag. You've brought your own little hamper bag, and so you feel green and you feel like you're helping the planet. But you're not. Every act of consumption is an environmental problem.
Yeah. Chris, turning to your point about Matt and Extinction Rebellion, I think it's very interesting. I think you're right that maybe that's not the best way to deal with it, but Extinction Rebellion have a very interesting take on this idea of hypocrisy. So it's also relevant to your example just then. The idea is that if everybody made the best possible choices within the current system that we have, it still wouldn't be anywhere near enough to avert the crisis that we're facing. So what we need to do is we need to advocate for system change. So yes, I think it would be better if all the activists for Extinction Rebellion, for any climate movement, were vegan or at least plant-based. Didn't fly as much as possible. Swam to America rather than flying like Thunberg's doing. Isn't she swimming there?
She's sailing, mate.
Oh, she's sailing there.
She's not that much of a superhero.
She's missing out on some good exercise, if you ask me. You should be swimming everywhere. So my point is that their Extinction Rebellion, the way that they deal with that charge of hypocrisy is like, well, if you take it to its logical conclusion, within this current framework, we're still not going to be doing anywhere near enough. So yes, try and be as consistent as possible as an individual, because then, like we discussed in the vegan episode, you're going to have a lot more credibility to those you're advocating to. But really what we need to do is change the system.
Yeah, and I think there's a big problem there with there's these huge corporations. Was it 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions? Now, Roger, who loves to troll me on Facebook, pointed out that people can individually boycott. Fine, but they're not, right? And it's all too easy for a 100 companies to then go, but they're having lots of babies in Bangladesh. Maybe that's the problem. And you're like, well...
Yeah. Well, don't forget also that these companies, they're not like the Nikes where you buy shoes from, right? These are petrochemical companies. These are mining companies. They're producing resources that are then later used in end products. Petrochemical companies, their resources go into all kinds of end products. Yeah,
and the model's actually B2B, right? So Nestle will be transporting goods in trucks that have petrol that come from that thing. So yeah, you can't directly boycott a lot of these. And it's a choice for a minority. Like the average person who can't afford to shop at a local organic farmer's market doesn't really have the choice. They just buy what's available in the supermarket, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. That's why we need to change.
So you need systemic change, but you need quite radical systemic change for this, right? Because capitalism, which is the current system, is oriented on infinite growth in a finite system.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
What about
I think
growth?
George Monbiot said only an economist or a madman would think that you can have infinite growth in a finite planet. It's just not possible.
Yeah, but that is the system currently there, right? And even here in the Netherlands, I don't know about the UK, maybe you can inform me, but there were climate agreements or climate goals enforced by court order, and the government is not gonna make them here. They're gonna come shy of these court ordered goals to meet, and the reason why is because they don't want to too radically change the economy, because they do not feel that they have the political leverage or the political support to do this. They feel if we are going to make too radical changes, people are going to be like, well, what about my consumerist fancy lifestyle? I see it in my wallet, not in my backyard.
But listen, this is the problem, man. Like that lifestyle has an expiry date. Either it's going to be sooner or later, but eventually it's going to come to the point where that lifestyle is just a pipe dream. It's not going to be possible anymore. This constant consumerism, this evading, that's got an expiration date. It's as simple as that. It's just how willing are we to accept that will be sooner rather than later. It's like we want to carry on and go, well, the environment, but in 5 years, whatever, in 10 years, it's like,
but that's still not happening.
Guys, this argument is 20 years old, though. Older, right? 40 years old.
Older, way older, yeah.
Honestly, and I don't see it changing. In every 4-year election cycle, it's another, but what would the economy do? I think this is the joy of having a generation where no one really has good job prospects and everyone's scraping by on minimum wage and doesn't have much money. And we always thought that would result in them flipping the table. But that might not be a super aggressive anarchy rebellion. They might just end up voting green because why not? Like, who cares if the economy goes down 10 points? That's not going to affect them. That's just going to affect the banks.
I think it's even
right?
more extreme than that, really, because if there's no future, what's to stop people from flipping the tables? But I think before we get to that point, I think that's why we have...
flip any tables.
Before we get to the table flipping, let us at least try everything within our power. Oh, God.
Wait, someone's flipping tables already.
I'm just flipping my bloody water bottle on the floor and spilling the water.
Finn's kicking off. This is how the rebellion begins.
Yeah, non-violent civil disobedience. I say violent kicking over of water bottles. Let's do that. Anyway, my point was, what was my point? Yeah, my point was that we should be trying, look at the traditional models. Climate protests have been happening for the last 30, 40 years. Greenpeace, they've laid the groundwork, but it hasn't been enough. Now that groundwork's been laid and information has got out to the public, organizations like Fridays for Future, the Youth Climate Strike movement, boycotting school, going on strike from school, Extinction Rebellion, non-violent civil disobedience, they're filling this space that people are sort of saying that we need something a bit more radical and up to the point of non-violence. And if we don't do enough in this time, before it gets absolutely terrible, we get, millions upon millions of climate refugees, food shortages, crop failures. If we get to that point and we haven't done enough, it just seems to me like it will get violent. People will get violent. I don't want that at all, but it seems like that's
easy to be
probably
pessimistic. There are multiple signs that things are changing, right? Like, so more and more people are engaged. I think this Extinction Rebellion protest in London is going to be huge. And if you look, what was it? Earlier this year in Britain, we started making over 50% of our energy came from renewable sources. So it's very easy to be pessimistic, but at the same point, and the media loves to tell a negative story, which is why there's pictures of Amazon burning. But if you look at things that happen on a local level, like solar panels on houses, that spreads like a virus. Like, people care. People do.
But
people are getting involved.
I don't see it growing here enough. And the idea here as well to get everyone off gas is to put people on warming pumps. And then I see a lot of complaints about warming pumps producing too many vibrations and sounds, and people think it's too expensive.
Is that
and they don't really?
Is that heat from the earth?
It's again a not in my backyard kind of thing.
Is that heat from the earth, though? Is that what the warming pump is? A sump down. Yeah. And often the problem as well with those sorts of systems is we don't have the battery capacity yet. So if you look at how a national grid works, the problem is, and again, this is part of our outdated system of how we do work, is that everyone has to wake up at 7, have a shower at the same time, commute to an office or a factory somewhere. That's really bad because any of these systems kind of don't handle a mass surge at once. But as we move towards a more globalized remote economy, hopefully there'll be less predictable surges. At the same point, an hour after sunrise, you're always going to get a lot of people waking up. And until we have the battery capacity that we can do that at a bunch of different times and avoid stress on a nationalized grid. But again, a lot of these problems are because it was built that way, right? It was built, that's the 70-year-old system that we still have because we inherited it.
I wanted to turn to your point, Chris, about solar power. I think you're right. I think it's really good that we see these small success stories, and that definitely has to be encouraged. But look at Spain, for example, where they had grants, like in the UK, where you could get a grant to upgrade your house to solar panels. Then they took the grant away, and now, in fact, you have to pay a tax to install and maintain solar panels. In Spain, this country with so much light, sunlight most of the time. Bloody hot. It's perfect. Even solar, the ones where it's just heat based, you just have some black radiators on your roof. That'd be great. I don't think they're taxed, but the whole system, there's still so many barriers we need to radically change to do enough to.
Or get rid of the fucking government. And any government that doesn't see this as a priority needs to go. And,
this is the
honestly,
point. Yeah.
Okay, so for this you need demographic, democratic power.
I,
Do we have
I
it?
love
Do
the
we have it in many
euphemism.
countries?
I love the
No,
euphemism.
we don't have it. We didn't have it. There was no democratic power for the progressive activists in Brazil, and there wasn't in the United States, and there isn't in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, okay, so what you're hinting at with democratic is that the baby boomers need to die, right? The generation that caused this needs to die.
is.
The question is whether we'll just become as cynical and selfish when we're their age. We'll see.
I hope not. Come on.
Once you've got 3 houses, you're subletting. Yeah. I quite like the economy now, actually. It's doing all right.
Don't you think? You see that a lot. I see that a lot.
I don't know.
Suddenly, people bought a house, and it's all about the value of my house. Will it go up or down? How safe will my existence be? But the whole thing is, our existence is already completely unsafe.
Yes. Like, you can't.
But to admit to that, it takes. I feel like for myself, I've been through the stages of grief, and I've already accepted that the world might not work out in 20, 30 years anymore.
Oh my God! No,
So
but
be it.
this is what we need to avoid because.
So be it.
Like,
No,
for
you're in
me,
the
climate
bargaining
despair
stage.
Is just
You're
the
in
other side of the
bargaining stage.
dude? Climate despair is just the other side of the coin for climate denial, right? Like, seriously,
It's not despair. It's not
giving up.
despair. It's looking at the actual data. The data, both that for 40 years they've been warning the system is going out of control, and around the year 2020, 2025, it needs to be changed. We're here now. It hasn't been changing. In fact, it's going the other way. Looking at the democratic movements all across the world, there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, screw the planet. I'll get mine now." Or they're too shy too short-sighted to even think about it. Like in Brazil, like plenty million people didn't know what they were voting for. They didn't really understand it.
I
In
think
America too.
this argument, like this despair that you talk about, Chris. Maybe that could apply to people without children, but anyone who has kids or has cousins or nieces and nephews, surely that would make you care enough for their future, if not your own, right?
Well, arguably, having kids is the worst thing you can do for the environment.
Quite possibly. Well, for sure, it is. With some very, very slim exceptions, right? But the point is, there are kids, and they should have a future, and I think that should be enough to motivate anyone.
They should have a future. Do they? What kind of innate right to a future do they have?
On Mars. On Mars.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, you were born at the end of the
Musk will be
period of
shipping 'em off.
sapiens. Yeah.
Get the
Sorry,
popcorn
tough
out.
luck.
What's the end
There
of
was
the
a
world?
generation of dinosaurs that was born just before the meteor crashed as well. Well, poor little dinosaurs.
That's true. But dinosaurs didn't have the ability to influence their ecosystem.
Do
and their
you though?
environment.
Do you?
Well, we don't have.
And we do collectively, don't we?
I mean, there are
Yeah,
plenty
we do it
of
every day.
examples where there's been big pushes that have flipped politics quickly, right? Like there's a few things we can talk to. The moon project, right? Like the decision to put a man on the moon, that was a lot of people giving NASA 4% of GDP. Like things can turn quickly if there's enough building, enough massive support. I mean, if you look at the current election, all of the Democrat, well, not all, but half of the Democratic candidates are talking about a Green New Deal, investing a significant proportion of money
that's
into
very true.
jump-starting
Joe-
things, and it's responding very well. Not just to
Yeah,
young
and-
voters,
and-
but to a lot of voters who don't
and
believe the
Joe
oil companies
Biden-
anymore, right?
Joe Biden is going to win the primary, and Joe Biden is going to lose against Trump.
Well,
Look at what's happening
it's
in the
part
polls.
of your
Look at
despair,
what's
not
happening
just
in the polls. I mean, Joe
political rather
Biden
than
has been
environmental.
Joe Biden has been leading with more than a 10-point difference from Sanders and Warren ever since they've been starting to poll. There's been no change in that, basically.
Okay, but listen, let's bring this back to Chris's point. Look at Brexit. Look at UKIP. Nigel Farage, he was banging on about UKIP. Look what happened. There's a referendum. Boom, Brexit's happening all of a sudden. Maybe the same thing can happen with the Green Party in this environmental revolution. Maybe there's enough political will to actually shift against So let's be honest, in the UK, at least a very ropey conservative government, you have very little support. Boom, switch the system and do something radical, like have a citizens' assembly to actually find some real world applicable solutions to what we can do.
I can't imagine the opposition to the Conservative Party not running on at least a partially green platform.
Of course. That's what Labour maybe lacked in the last few years, but I think if they're smart, they'll jump on it.
So is a referendum is a referendum in the UK an advisable referendum or binding referendum? It's always binding?
Stop trying to talk about Brexit.
It was advisory. It was
So,
advisory, but everyone's
if it's
taken it as
advisory
binding.
and the Conservative win and you do a referendum on climate change, can the Conservative Party not just say, well, screw off?
That's
No,
the point
because the
about
Conservative Party are very concerned about democracy. But I think a general election is more likely to
Chris,
change
that's your
this
best
than a
joke so
referendum.
far on Beyond Binary.
I like the XR approach, which is very direct
Yes.
action. I
Well,
like
that's what it
Code
takes.
Red.
Like
Code
Martin
Red
Luther King,
and-
you're only going to change big things when you make it clear as a minority that you are strong and you're not accepting this anymore. That's the future. That's the path to change. It's not through slow election cycles and worrying about, we'll try a bit, but what about the points for the economy? How many politicians does it take to change a fucking light bulb? Who the fuck knows? We haven't seen them try yet. Or they're waiting to see if China's going to change their light bulb first. It's fucking bollocks.
But it's problematic to switch the social media outrage into massive disobedience, right? Because people now, it's just like, pray for Amazonia, click
like,
Ooh,
yeah.
I've done my little bit for society.
Yeah, but there's other things you can do, right? I shared an article that was 9 practical things you can do to to help the Amazon fires and generally the climate, right, globally. And it involves things like donating to Rainforest Alliance, eating less meat. There's a whole list of practical steps you can take.
Generally, but I always look at this and I'm always like, okay, what if I take away the donation factor? Because 99% of all of this is always about donations. Which I understand the money has to come from somewhere, but they're always trying to look for the money with the people that don't have that much money. And the people that have too much money are the ones that are not contributing really much at all. So,
Except Notre Dame, yeah.
It's Greenpeace asking for my money. It's Amazon Watch asking for my money. It's a million organizations asking for my very limited amount of money. So what can I do? Well, vegan lifestyle. We've talked about this before. I'm doing it. That's one of the things I think I can contribute. I've been changing my plastic toothbrush for a bamboo replaceable toothbrush. So small little things like that. But I'm trying, for example, also to recycle. And we don't even really know how to recycle. We can't.
No, do you know how much recycling we
get
just
mixed-
sell to
mixed
India to
garbage
sit on an
that-
Indian landfill somewhere?
Exactly. We get mixed garbage. If there is in the hard plastic, a little bit of metal, a whole batch can become unrecyclable. We don't know what to be. We haven't even been talking about waste. We're talking about forest fires and temperature degrees. We haven't even been talking about waste. Plastic chips bags from the 70s are still floating around in the great garbage patch, landing on beaches here and there. And that's just stuff from the 70s. So we've been putting increasingly much more plastic into the ocean since the 70s.
Well, the point is that gets into the whole food system, doesn't it? It gets into tap water supplies. It gets into animals. Look at fish. People who are eating seafood. I shudder to think of the amount of plastic that's discovered. I've heard tales of chefs cutting open fish and finding plastic bottle tops and stuff like that. You see the whales washed up on beaches, 50 kilos of plastic in their stomach, choking out their real food source. So beyond CO2 and temperature, it's a far bigger. Yeah.
Snow on mountains contains microplastic part. It
Right.
can't get any further than that, can it?
Indeed.
It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to see a politician write a defense of plastic at this point.
Okay, so they're not, but what are they doing? So they do a EU ban on single-use plastics, but it's 6 categories of single-use plastic. Where are the wide sweeping bans, the wide sweeping actions that scientists have been saying we need them now?
No, this is why we need to take to the streets. This is why I agree with Extinction Rebellion. Yeah. And look, you said you're concerned that all we do is smash like on social media. But to be fair, Marijn, where did you go? Was it yesterday?
How do you mean? To the Animal Rights March, yeah, yesterday.
Yeah, so you went to a march yesterday. Me and Finn are going to a march next month. And let's be clear, you guys know me. I'm not the most like environmentally conscious, hippie, reactionary, revolutionary guy. Like I'm a salesperson, capitalist living in London. But I am going to this demonstration.
Yeah.
like so.
Do something. Yeah.
Yeah, and more people are, I think, ready to do something. I think it's easy to despair, but at the same point, you preach despair, but you are still going to things and doing things. Like you haven't given up yet.
I just want to live according to my own ideals. I do think that maybe there is a hope, especially when I see the amount of social media reaction on this Amazon. This is what I started with. I do not think that the Amazon being on fire is particularly a new thing at the moment. This outrage could have happened any year before, and deforestation has been an ongoing process there. And maybe there's a slight increase, but really does it deserve the slight increase, this outrage? No, there's an outrage because people are concerned, largely. But I think people are very, I don't know if it's confused or short-sighted in what they really need to do about it. Radical change also starts with yourself, and I don't think enough people are willing to start with themselves big enough. And maybe even myself, I don't. You know, I buy too many video games and gadgets that are entirely not environmental conscious.
I mean, these days though, you download like data, right? Like it's never been more environmentally efficient to buy a video game.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe, but the consoles I used to play it on, I refresh them every few years. I buy a new telephone every 2 years.
So
There's
drop in
quite
the ocean,
environmental
bro.
pressure, I'm
Literally.
sure of that. Maybe.
It's easy to be hard on yourself, but like I do think this change is growing, and it will meet a critical mass, and then more and more dominoes will fall. Like people are really, really getting upset and angry about certain things, and once the big supermarkets start really catching on to try and cash in on that extra, if it makes a difference between whether I go to Lidl or Tesco's because one's doing a lot more environmental things, well, it will for me and it will for a bunch of people too, especially if there's not a noticeable difference in price, which it will be more and more doable at scale.
Yeah, there's a hope for high-tech solutions, right? Like vertical farming and agriculture with closed systems, less use of pesticides, less use of ground floor to create way higher yield of crops. So sure, there might be technical solutions. I hope they come in time.
With augmented reality, you're not going to have to commute to an office every day to have a meeting. You can just do it from your home, and that stops a lot of people transporting every day, right?
Sure, but don't forget, like, our huge growth in international globalized industrial scale came from us starting to harvest petrochemicals from the earth, right? And as long as we do that, we'll keep a giant economy boom going. And I think even with all the change, they're still going to use it all.
But all we need is all we
money.
want is cheap energy, and we're addicted to cheap energy, right? And the only reason our current petrochemical energy is defined as cheap is because we've classified all of the expenses to the environment as an externality.
Yeah,
as long as enough
because it's
people are
subsidized.
conscious that it's part of a closed system, then throwing rubbish out your window is not an effective way to maintain a house. It's not sustainable.
Right. And we've also subsidized it. I think that's also an important thing, is that
yes,
I read that nuclear energy there's not a singular nuclear energy generator that's been profitable ever.
Yes.
We add money into it.
Yeah, and oil is always subsidized, and people say, "Oh, how can solar compete?" And part of the problem is that oil gets a lot more subsidies than the other ones. The problem with nuclear as well, actually, and I've hinted at this before, is that people want to make nuclear weapons. You could make nuclear a lot safer and more efficiently if you didn't intentionally use a process that was designed to make fuel for nuclear missiles. That's a major problem there. But again, big defense companies and all that corruption and lobbying that goes with it. So
I mean, part of nuclear is also we just don't know. I saw a post of there's a Russian build a nuclear generator on a ship. So not like not to generate the ship, but literally to generate power for houses. But it's a floating platform, basically. Russians saying super safe, we've tested it. This is one of the safest solutions we can do with generating nuclear energy. And the critics are saying, well, we don't know what could happen. If this thing sinks while it's operating, it's kind of a big disaster.
Yeah, did they never hear of the bloody Titanic? What's wrong with them?
Exactly. Right? But then the Russians say, no, this is not going to sink, But they said about the Titanic. But
Yeah. Exactly. Guys, what about reforestation and rewilding? For me, this seems like a really, really important point that people are starting to understand. Planting trees. You've seen probably on Facebook so many posts about, Ethiopia plants 1 billion trees. In China, they're planting mass forests to try and stop the spread of the Gobi Desert. In the Sahel, in Africa, below the Sahara, Ecosia, that search engine, I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah,
Instead of Google, you plant a tree for every search. They're building a huge... the Green Wall, the Great Green Wall of Africa. So what they're doing is sort of from Senegal through to Somalia. They're trying to build a huge wall to stop the desertification and the spreading of the Sahel and the Sahara Desert. So that's a huge project to try and tackle climate instability in that area, which is, if it's not tackled, it's going to lead to a lot of migrants from basically climate refugees and climate migrants. So there are a lot of possibilities. And you look at the UK government, and they've released a lot of funding for small and large and medium scale reforesting, rewilding projects, planting tree projects. The Queen the other day planted a tree, good on her, Queenie. Someone said, do you want me to help you? She's like, I think I know how to plant a tree. Quality. I was like, go on, Queenie. I don't like the Queen. Off with her head, but
she had like a shovel in her hands. I don't believe this.
She did. Yeah.
Wow.
You watch a video on BBC.
Yeah. They offered to do it for her, and she was like, they just thought she was there for the photo op, and she was like,
yeah. She's like, no, I'll plant a bloody tree. Yeah, and that's the kind of like positive role model that we need, right? I know a lot of people look up to the Queen, even if we couldn't care less. A lot of it, you see the Queen. She's 300 years old. She's still planting a tree, and that's inspiring. And there's loads of young people. Sorry. she's 21, isn't she?
She looks fit on my banknotes. So.
The point is, she's doing a positive thing. Prince Charles, he's involved with environmentalist stuff. There's loads and loads more people showing the young people of today that you can do something personally. You can get involved. You can plant trees. There's funding available. There's a lot of stuff going on. Really, we do still need that with systemic change. We have to change the land use in the UK and of the world from monocropping agriculture and animal agriculture to more efficient, like you said, Moraine, vertical gardening, things like that. And then use this land, rewild it to capture all this carbon, to, help the water cycle system. All of these things could have a really nice knock-on effect. Okay, we can't model ecosystems perfectly. We don't know exactly the intricacies of exactly how they work, but we can at least give ecosystems and native species a chance to regain, re-thrive in their systems, which have, been largely destroyed by humanity. So these rewilding projects and reforestation projects are fantastic. Not without their drawbacks, though. You look at China and their kind of mono culture forests, which obviously do the trick but aren't the most sustainable type of forestry. So there's subtleties in there, but let's all go and plant a tree.
Yeah, let's do it, and let's all go out there and protest, guys. Come on. If your government's not treating this as an urgent priority, then they need to go. That's it. I'm done with
Harumph.
Well, for too long we've been like, but what's good for the economy? And right now, I don't think the economy is looking after enough people for them to be as concerned about that. Like the threat is losing more and more bite every time it's issued. Like, flip the table.
What about some logical fallacies, guys? Have you seen any logical fallacies?
It's all across the book. Like almost every logical fallacy is used on one side of the debate, to be honest. I had a list, but I lost it when I crashed my computer. But let me just open the list up. So let's see which ones we have. The straw man, you misrepresent someone's argument to make it easier to attack. We've seen this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, vegans and environmentalists are literally mocked, right, by mainstream media as just like pitiful
It's changing.
people. Well,
It's changing in the last months. I've seen a shift.
I think Standing Rock was a big change as well in recent
Yeah.
history. So
That's true.
I think that was a big moment where people really saw the police coming out violently to protect oil companies' interests against
was so clear.
a lot of people. And sadly, because I think, as you said with the Amazon example, Native people's involvement and history with this movement is well founded and well known. But Standing Rock, it really started to get reported on because a lot more white people were there as well. And sadly, that's when climate change will start getting serious. Is when rich white people start getting injured. That's when the news pays attention, right?
Yeah, and arrested, possibly like an Extinction Rebellion.
Are we going to get arrested, Finn?
I don't know if I'm down for that. Like, I would like to, but just the implications are maybe problematic.
Well, yeah,
for
no,
my-
we both want to live abroad, right?
Yeah, it's hard to do if you're in prison.
I don't
isn't it?
want a criminal record. It's going to make it hard to visit
Well,
my
there's
wife's family in Thailand.
With Extinction Rebellion, there's like three circles, right? There's the inner circle of people who have committed to sacrifice and become arrested.
Lonely time. Sorry,
So there's that
carry on.
one. So if you're really committed, you want to be arrested. Like there's old people who are. There's an old man I saw. He was 82. He's doing it for his grandchildren. He's not doing anything with his life. He's just on pension and he's just going to marches.
Might as
No,
well
but he
get
cares.
arrested. Fuck
Yeah,
it.
he might as well get arrested. He's like, fuck, I don't care. Fuck it. Then there's people who are supporting on those people getting arrested. They're doing frontline stuff. They're doing, they're sort of lugging stuff around. They're there. They're causing noise. They're marching. They're doing banners. They're not actually going to confront the police and get arrested, but they're doing other stuff. Then there's like the outer circle of people who are sort of like the admin bods. Do you know what I mean? Doing the social media. They're organizing stuff. They're baking vegan delights for the XR meetings. So all levels are included.
Picking
depending
up
on how
rubbish
far
after
into
the
it.
protest. Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like that's very low risk but very important.
So what you're saying is everyone can get involved. We don't need to bring our balaclavas and baseball bats.
Right? Yeah. No, not yet. Anyway, as long as they listen, at least somewhat. Another logical fallacy is it's too late. It's too late. We deserve this. All of that. It's
I
just
literally see
another.
this pushed by the same oil lobbyists who said they weren't sure whether now was the right time to act 5 years ago. It's the same people pushing a bullshit lie that, give up, lose hope. That's exactly what they want you to do. Don't get involved.
Exactly.
You won't change anything
Yeah.
anyway. Don't try it. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Fuck them. I'm getting involved. I'm sticking my nose in. I'm getting loud. I'm going to make a point of writing to MPs, voting green.
Just
anyone
do everything
that has
you
a
can
proper
within your
green
power.
platform is getting my vote
Yeah.
in every single election moving forwards.
Yeah.
Because
Quite
the alternative's
honestly,
just not worth it.
My response to it is too late, and I maybe even think it is too late, but my response is so what?
Yeah.
What if it is too late?
What's the
We
worst
still
case,
need-
right? You make a nicer world with cleaner energy.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. There's
Exactly.
nothing to lose, really.
There's nothing to lose. Exactly.
Yeah.
So one that I've seen more on the other side of the debate being accused of to the environmentalist is the false cause. So that they presume that there is a real perceived relationship between things when there is none. And that causes one or the other. And, the anti-environmentalist change people always saying, you're thinking that there's a connection, but that there's not really a connection. And the false cause is also often accused, even though science has been pretty much...
I mean, science is quite good
consensual
at working
about
out the
this,
difference between
right?
correlation and causation, right? That's exactly what scientific data is for.
Right. So it's kind of the logical fallacy of a logical fallacy being used to accuse the other party, in a way.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't mind. I actually understand why some dickhead for an oil company lobby pumps out these lies. I get it. My problem is with the people who gleefully
Right,
believe the
'cause
propaganda and go,
right,
oh,
exactly.
fucking hippies, you're idiots. This is the truth. And you're like,
Exactly,
dude,
and that's quite
where
a
do you
few.
think you get your data from? Shut the fuck up.
There's quite a few. I see them all over the news here in Holland. We
and I
have a
think they're
political
clever.
party that, even with the Amazon fires, that political party immediately came out to deny any problem with deforestation.
Well, you hit a big problem there because the news loves an argument. And so they'll get two people out, one person for, one person against, let's argue. And you have one
Right,
person
the
that
Vox
represents
Pops.
98% of scientific opinion, and one guy that's like, I'm paid for by the oil lobbies and represents fucking no one other than big oil and big money. And you're like, why do these people have equal platforms? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's not a balanced argument.
Yeah, but this is the vox popping of news, right? And we even do it with news. It's like Twitter also your news. It's like, no, goddammit, you're the news. You're supposed to do your journalistic duties and present it in a well-balanced way.
And the scientists have a
supported
problem,
by the
right?
facts.
Because data and facts don't always win in an argument with a guy that's just going there to win. And so he's there just to look like he won. So for someone half paying attention to the TV, the reptilian brain looks at it and goes, well, it looks like that guy won the argument. He came out strong. Well, yeah, because he doesn't have any facts. All he has is appeal to emotion, which does resonate harder with people that don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's mostration, isn't it? It's looking like they're winning, even though when you actually analyze what they're saying, it's rubbish.
Meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always think about the GIF that is shared a lot of Nigel Farage standing in the EU Parliament saying, everything is going pretty well, right? It's like, he just made up that it's all going great and Brexit is all going to lead to the utopia,
You just
right?
can't help
Supported by
yourself,
nothing,
can you,
but
Lorraine?
if you
Like,
say
you
it with a
just
lot of
can't
confidence...
go through one episode without mentioning bloody
But-
Brexit.
we've talked about Brexit before, but it's just like the confidence behind it, right? It's like everything is going pretty well. You know, if you just say it with a lot of confidence, apparently people will believe it, and you see it with Trump as well.
It wins elections, right? Just say, I won. I won that debate.
But then this whole argument is being used. It's kind of being like XR have taken that and they've kind of taken it the other way. You know, and I saw a Hard Talk episode. You've seen that, right? BBC Hard Talk. It's like this dun 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 hard-hitting journalism. You know, like 3 a.m, and you watch it
And
when
there's
you're really
been some
tired.
great
You're like,
episodes
"What?"
of that, by the way.
Yeah. So there was this guy interviewing Roger Hallam, who's one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion, who studied all this social psychology on, what we talked about in the vegan episode about social change and consistency and having a message. And the guy was trying to trip him up the whole time, and Roger Hallam was just there, just steady as a rock. And he's saying, are you saying that it's that Greenpeace, they've been activists for 30 years, they haven't done enough? He's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They haven't done enough. And he just firing shots, just like, pow, pow, pow.
Yeah. And that's why I won't allow this despair. I won't allow the fucking meek politicians who are concerned for the economy that represents the top 10%. I don't give a fuck. I will keep doing things, and everyone else needs to do it too. And it's just not good enough. But we can't change things. Politicians have to change things. I'm sorry, but in this day and age, if you still have faith that politicians will fix this for you, you are having a fucking laugh.
But this is another issue, right? There's that like the politicization of the climate crisis. People say like, "Oh, Extinction Rebellion, you're politicizing the science."
No, there's no debate here. There's no politics here. There's just the thing's on fire, and the fire needs to be put out. And that's when you stop.
This stuff.
Like if the pilot dies on a plane and you need to find another pilot to fly, you don't sit around debating whether to turn left or right and have a bunch of people vote on each. You just go, right, who's most qualified? What do we have to do?
You fix
fucking
it.
do it. Go. That's it. We all
this
need
is
to do that. Stop waiting for someone else to fix it. Get out on the streets, protest, vote for politicians that give a shit, and start caring, because that's the only thing that's going to change it. And honestly, if hell's coming, we all die. Fuck it. If this is Armageddon, I want to go out knowing that I did my best fighting on the side of good.
Yeah, mostly
That's
that.
it.
Mostly
that's
that
all I
for
can
me.
do.
Mostly that, because I don't believe that. I think really still currently we're in the minority, democratic minority. And so we can go on the streets, we can try to create a change, but we'll need to turn it into a majority eventually. And I don't even know if we can, but I'm definitely gonna do my part.
3.5%,
Yeah.
isn't it? We need 3.5%. of solid, committed people behind the movement for it to have some real,
Yeah, well, it
real
wasn't
social change.
52% of people marching alongside Martin Luther King that changed
No,
segregation
exactly.
in America, right? Like, it's just enough people to give a shit that people start listening, and you can't ignore that voice anymore if it just gets louder and louder. And this is growing. This isn't going away. It's not like the oil companies aren't winning here, right? Like, the reason things are getting so desperate is because they know, and this is how they think, right? Oh shit, this environmental thing's getting big. This is going to be over, this gravy train, in 8 years' time. We need to burn as much as we can now while we can. Which puts the price up, which means it's more lucrative than ever to burn oil, because they're like, shit, our projections say that the environmentalists are going to stop us in 12 years. So we need to burn it now, quick.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what you said, Chris. You put it really well. Roger Hallam said, we're not politicizing something, it's science. If you go to the doctor and she tells you you've got cancer, you don't say you disagree with the message. You urgently look for a treatment, and that's what we have to do.
Yeah. The final logical fallacy I'll hit on is the idea that like science is going to save us. And I think, although I don't want despair, I think too much hope it is a problem as well. And this idea that we're going to we'll just colonize Mars, and it's like Mars doesn't have any air. Like,
No,
if we
you're not gonna live on
can't
Mars.
get the hang of making this environment habitable, I don't think we're going to be very successful on Mars.
Exactly
What
right.
about the 8 billion? What about the 8 billion
Food,
people you
everything we
leave
need.
behind on Earth? What, they just let them die? Like, that doesn't seem like a very good solution to me.
So Finn, I believe you've got a quote about hope.
I have. This is from a climate scientist called Kate Marvel, and she said, as a climate scientist, I'm often asked to talk about hope. Climate change is bleak, the organisers always say. Tell us a happy story. Give us hope. The problem is, I don't have any. What we need is courage. Courage is the resolve to do well without the insurance of a happy ending. And that's key. Boom. Well said, Kate.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I am 15 years old and I'm from Sweden. I speak on behalf of climate justice now. Many people say that Sweden is just a small country and it doesn't matter what we do. But I've learned that you are never too small to make a difference. And if a few children can get headlines all over the world just by not going to school, then imagine what we could all do together if we really wanted to. But to do that, we have to speak clearly, no matter how uncomfortable that may be. You only speak of greed, eternal economic growth, because you are too scared of being unpopular. You only talk about moving forward with the same bad ideas that got us into this mess, even when the only sensible thing to do is pull the emergency brake. You are not mature enough to tell it like it is. Even that burden you leave to us children. But I don't care about being popular. I care about climate justice and a living planet. Our civilization is being sacrificed for the opportunity of a very small number of people to continue making enormous amounts of money. Our biosphere is being sacrificed so that rich people in countries like mine can live in luxury. It is the sufferings of the many which pay for the luxuries of the few. The year 2078, I will celebrate my 75th birthday. If I have children, maybe they will spend that day with me. Maybe they will ask me about you. Maybe they will ask why you didn't do anything while there still was time to act. You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done, rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope. We cannot solve the crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity. And if solutions within this system system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself. We have not come here to beg world leaders to care. You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Let's fucking do it, guys. Let's kick ass. Let's save the fucking planet. Come on.
Yeah.
Who's with me?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Let's go out plant trees.
Cool. Plant some trees. Make some noise.
Yeah. Eat less beef. Done.
All right. I'm trying.
Stop
I'm
the
trying.
use of single
Seriously,
plastics.
Like, guys, to hit back on the funny thing is, right, like every time I try and go a bit more vegan, the pushback is amazing. All these arguments that like vegan people are pushing their dietary choices on non-vegans, the reverse is true. Every time I don't order meat, everyone on the table gets pissed off with me and spends an hour and a half talking at me. Oh, why aren't you eating meat?
Yeah.
Like, seriously,
Yeah.
my family get pissed off with me, my wife gets pissed off with me, my friends make fun of me. It's really hard.
The Carnist Church is doctrine is very deeply integrated. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like say, I'm not a vegan standing on the street protesting with a placard, having a go at people, and just occasionally try and order a salad, and everyone has a problem with it.
Oh, wow. But I think it's different. Like I always thought it'd be harder to be a vegan, but maybe it's harder what you're doing. Like as soon as I've gone vegan, people kind of get it. They're just like, okay, you're vegan, right?
Yeah,
And
I
then
just
I'm
imagine the circles you're in, Finn. You're surrounded by vegan hippie people.
No,
It's
not really,
easy
man. I'm living in
sales
Spain. They
conferences
don't
in
even
London,
think-
mate. There's not
This
many
is
of your
true.
type round here.
This
I tell
is
you.
true.
Hey, in Spain, they think that ham isn't even meat, and tuna isn't meat. You know, you're like, yeah, give me the vegetable sandwich. Oh, yeah, it's got tuna. Like what? It's so ridiculous here, man. It's insane.
It's a sea cucumber.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Are you going to do your
Guys.
quote? Right.
Yeah, much love. I think we
No.
managed to get through that without it being too
I
fucking
like the one
depressing. Well
quote.
done.
Okay, nice. Maybe we should put this little post chat after the outro song and have it as a little bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
you
No,
want.
and I think there'll be some to edit, but no, that was the right message. I think we didn't manage to make it light and funny, so instead we just went fuck it, get
Yeah.
violent and political. Like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think there were some jokes in there. Hopefully enough to
Yeah.
carry it. Yeah. Nice.
Should we stop recording then?
Yeah, let's do it.
3, 2,